So how am I doing? No, I don't mean me personally. What I'm referring to is how is my current set build for the Sovereign 150 set coming along. In today's video, we're going to talk about my exact progress now that I have 34/35 cards of the 150 I need for my complete Sovereign 150 set. And we're going to do this in 4 different parts. Number 1, I'm going to give everyone a refresher of my goal when it comes to what my goals are with the Sovereign 150 set. Number 2, where do I stand right now with Sovereign 150? Hall of Famers versus non-Hall of Famers. Number 3, we're going to jump into the financials. How much have I spent so far obtaining these cards? And then number 4, now that we have these cards in hand, let's look forward. What are my expectations for the remainder of the year? Before we get there though, welcome to my channel, the home of T206 here on YouTube. If you are new to T206, welcome. Do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button so you are notified the very next time I release a T206 video. But if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris, otherwise known on X and Instagram as @CRT_sportscards. But let's get to it. What are and what is my goal for this Sovereign 150 set? Now, you are correct here. The goal is to complete and buy all 150 Sovereign 150 cards. But it's a little bit deeper than that when it comes to what am I doing in relationship, or what did I learn from building my T206 Polar Bear set that I can overlay into the Sovereign 150 set. The first being the Hall of Famers that have a Sovereign 150 back. I want them in a better condition / grade than the regular copies of the cards in the set. When you look over my Polar Bear set, right now I'm right about 2.43, and from a graded perspective, when you look at my Hall of Famers, I'm down into the single digits. And when I think about the person selling this set in the distant future, well after I am gone, I want to make this set as easy to sell as possible, and having the Hall of Famers in better grade than the common players or the regular cards of the set are critical for this mission. Number 2, from a big picture, my goal is to have a grade 1 set. When it comes to buying these cards, I want them in 1 grade. So every regular player in the set, I want in that 1 grade. So that leads me to buying Hall of Famers in 1.5 and 2. I don't expect, due to the scarcity of these cards, to really ever be able to afford a Hall of Famer in a 3 or a 4. Because number 1, they're just a lot rarer than their Piedmont 150 counterparts. But in general, I do have to remain within a budget for these cards. And so if I ended up with 115 1 grades and 35 2 grades, all Hall of Famers, I would consider this set done very, very well. And then number 3 here, where there's a little bit of a caveat, is I'm actually building a 522. I'm not building a 520. But this is not the typical 522 in T206. I don't have a Doyle, I don't have a McGee error, I don't have a Wagner or a Plank. What I'm doing here, and this goes back to my Elite 11 video, 11 subjects in the Sovereign 150 set have very, very rare Piedmont 350 backs, which are considered Elite 11. I have right now 2 Elite 11s, Vive Lindemann and Tom Jones. I'm also looking to then purchase their Sovereign 150 counterpart on the back end. So that is why you see my updates show 148 with an asterisk, because 2 of those cards are in Piedmont 350. I do need to go buy a Lindemann still. I only have the Tom Jones, but this is why I say I have 34/35 cards, because I do own that Tom Jones. But that gets into where do I stand right now with my set, because it's much deeper than just 34/35 cards. And by the way, as a collector yourself, what are you collecting right now? What set are you putting together, or team set or player set? How do you stand right now with your collection? Leave a comment below. I would love to know what you're collecting and how we can connect together as collectors of either pre-war or vintage cards. Now, some of you may know I started building this Sovereign 150 set at the 2024 National. This is when I decided to go after the 520. So 9 months later, having 35 cards of 150, I think is pretty good, but it's also met with needs improvement. And this is because of what I said earlier around obtaining the Hall of Famers first. But there's an asterisk here for me when I actually grade how I got to 35. In August of 2024, a 23 card Sovereign lot appeared on REA. 21 of the 23 were Sovereign 150s. And so I felt, even though my goal was to do the harder or the Hall of Famers first, I did not want to let this opportunity go by to add 20 plus cards to my set. So this is how I'm at 35 so far in such a, I would say, short time frame. But the challenge is I only own right now 3 of the 35 Hall of Famers. I have Bresnahan, I have Joe Tinker, and I have my favorite right now, which is Nap Lajoie in that PSA 2. But that is only 8% of the Hall of Famers. When you think about 35 of 150, that's 23%, I believe, of the entire set is Hall of Famers. So I am well under when you think about already now owning 35 of the 150. But now on the other side of the coin, if you remove the 21 and say, okay, I own 3 Hall of Famers and I own 14 other cards, that's a much better number. I am now over 20%. I'm now matching basically the overall Hall of Famers in the entire set in this other 14 purchases outside of that 21 card lot. Now, where I am pleased with my progress, even though it's only 3 cards, is the overall grade of my Hall of Famers. Now, the Joe Tinker I did purchase before I decided to make sure my Hall of Famers were in a better grade than the average player in the set, so that's why this isn't a 1. But when you take a look at Bresnahan, Tinker, and Lajoie, right now we're at 1.16 on an average grade. When you look at my entire set, if you factor in the graded cards, or the non-graded cards, by the way, at a 0 grade right now, you're down to 0.45, or sorry, 0.42. And then when you take away the Hall of Famers from that set, the other 32 cards are just 0.35. So right now, before I have sent in these raw cards to get graded, my Hall of Famers are just about 4x better than the average player in the set. So for that, I'm very happy. But in totality here, as of this moment, I'm going to give myself needs improvement from a review perspective, because 35 cards in, I should have at least 8 Hall of Famers, if not 9 or 10, due to how I should be collecting this set. But we will work on this over the next few months and see, can I get back caught up with the Hall of Famers. But now, let's dig into the financials of what I have spent to obtain these 35 cards as well. Talk about my absolute biggest mistake that I did make again with building a set. And by the way, I share these figures as a way to show people really how affordable a vast majority of these cards are. We get caught up into how expensive some of these cards are, but a vast majority are rather inexpensive. So looking at the individual categories of cards for my set at this exact moment, the overall blended average of my 35 cards right now is $108. When you, though, remove the 3 Hall of Famers, I drop down to $86 per card. When you look specifically at the Hall of Famers, though, I am at an average price of $344. Now, that $344 is largely driven right now by my Nap Lajoie at $690. That really throws off the other averages of the 3 cards in total. But in totality right now, Hall of Famers, $344, non-Hall of Famers, $86. But this is where my biggest mistake was at. And I do this from time to time. I don't hold myself accountable, which I feel I hold myself accountable a lot of the time when it comes to collecting cards. I really only buy T206 cards. But here I am a few months ago buying a PSA 4 Fred Tenney. Like, why? I don't know why I spent nearly $400 on this card. It does my set no good. No one in the future is going to be selling my set saying, oh, he's got a Fred Tenney 4 there. Let's go buy that set. It's just a waste of money. So when you remove Tenney from the numbers, I get down to $76 for the non-Hall of Famers in my set. And that's a very, very manageable number. So in overall dollar amount, I've spent at this moment just under $3,800. But I have some very, very expensive cards coming soon. We got the Ty Cobbs, we got Mathewson Whitecap. There's a lot of things to focus on in the future. But right now, I am just under $4,000. So now, what does the future hold for this set? What am I focused in on over the next several months? And we'll touch back on this in the next couple of months to see how I did and how the numbers stack up for this Sovereign 150 set. I'll tell you right now, I do have a couple of cards to share here in the next couple of days as far as recent pickups from REA. But it breaks down like this. Number one, there are, of course, 32 Hall of Famers I need for this set. But when it comes to the common player in the set, there are two buckets here of how I'm focused in on the Sovereign 150. When you look at cards that are Sovereign 150 and they do not have a Sovereign 350, in total, there are 62 different players that have only a 150. Those typically are a little bit harder to find because they don't have that 350 counterpart. In that group, there are, though, 11 Hall of Famers in that group of 62. Then, on the cards that have a Sovereign 150 and a Sovereign 350, there are 53 players that I need to obtain. If I can maybe put those off to the very end in the next year or so, I wouldn't be too disappointed. Now, the cards I briefly showed you a second ago, I did not use that logic when it came to do they or do they not have a 350 back. Also in that 53 card group, there are a vast majority of the Hall of Famers, 21. So those 32 Hall of Famers, though, are key for me and also maintaining them in a 1.5 or 2, maybe even a little more if I can fit it within the budget. But when I look at my set as a whole, if I can continue to add cards in that are common players at $75 and have them graded already, that to me is a massive win because I feel grading is roughly a $20 juice on every card you purchase. So when I take a look at all of these raw Sovereigns I have to get graded, this is another $400 to $450. But if I can maintain that $75 average, if not lower, and have them graded, I am winning and I'm continuing to dominate completing this Sovereign 150 set.